Quiet and distant, the little daughter of the housekeeper never touched anyone until she pulled the millionaire's tie with a strange familiarity. Subscribe to the channel and comment on where you are watching from. The clock at St. Francis Chapel in the Upper West Side chimes 6 times as Ella Johnson crosses the wrought iron gates of mansion number 847. Her calloused hands firmly hold the small pink backpack that belongs to her daughter, while her tired eyes observe the still dark windows of the imposing 3-story residence. At 42, Ella carries the weight of 8 months of a routine she never imagined living, taking little Isabella, just 6 years old, to her job as a maid in the house of businessman Arthur Henry. The girl walks beside her mother with measured and silent steps, her black leather shoes tapping against the marble floor of the front garden. Isabella wears the immaculate uniform of the private school where she studies in the morning, a navy blue plaid skirt, a crisp white shirt, and a cardigan that seems too big for her tiny frame. Her light brown hair is tied in 2 perfect braids, the result of Ella's morning dedication, who wakes up every day at 5 in the morning to ensure her daughter is always presentable. "Isa, remember what Mommy always says," Ella whispers, stopping in front of the back door of the mansion, where a discreet bell announces the arrival of the staff. The girl merely nods, her brown, expressionless eyes fixed on the marble floor that shines under the soft light of the early New York morning. There are no smiles, no words, just a silence that weighs like lead on the chest of any adult who tries to approach her. "Good, quiet in the kitchen, only touch what Mommy allows, and if someone asks anything..." Ella waits for a response that doesn't come. "Isabella." "I don't talk to strangers," the girl replies in a voice barely audible, as if the words were rare pearls she distributes with extreme caution. The house gradually awakens. Mrs. Davis, a robust 63-year-old woman, is already in the kitchen preparing breakfast when Ella and Isabella enter through the back door. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixes with the smell of warm French bread that she picks up from the bakery on the corner every day at 6:30 sharp. "Good morning, Ella." "Good morning, Isabella," Mrs. Davis greets, wiping her hands on her blue and white striped apron. Her grey hair is tied in a low bun, and her blue eyes show the same kindness as always, even knowing that the girl won't respond to the greeting. Isabella positions herself in the corner of the kitchen on a wooden chair that Ella improvised with cushions so her daughter could reach the table comfortably. She takes out a drawing notebook with a unicorn-printed cover and a pencil case filled with colored pencils, organized by shade. Her movements are precise, almost mechanical, as if she is following a sacred ritual that no one else understands. "Does she always stay here?" Mrs. Davis asks quietly to Ella, who has already started organizing the breakfast dishes on a silver tray. "Since I started bringing her. She doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't leave this spot. She just draws and observes everything," Ella replies, arranging the French porcelain cups with the care of someone who knows each piece costs more than her monthly salary. The activity in the house intensifies. Mr. Armando, the gardener, enters through the kitchen door, carrying a basket of fruits picked from the small garden. He tends in the back of the property. At 58, he has worked in the mansion for 2 decades and knows every plant, every tree, every corner of that 1,200 square meter lot. "Mrs. Davis, I brought some fresh limes and some tomatoes that turned out perfect," he announces, placing the basket on the black granite countertop. His eyes meet Isabella's for a moment, and he attempts a smile that is not reciprocated. The girl immediately lowers her gaze and returns to drawing with more intensity. "Armando, how many times have I told you? The girl is shy. It's no use trying to talk," Ella scolds, although her voice does not show irritation, only fatigue. "It's not shyness, Ella," Mrs. Davis observes, lowering her voice even further. "I've raised 4 children and cared for several grandchildren. This girl has something different. It's not normal for a 6-year-old to sit for 8 hours without saying a word. Isabella lifts her eyes for a second, and Mrs. Davis realizes that the girl has heard every word of the conversation. There is a disturbing intelligence in that gaze, as if she processes information that a child her age should not comprehend. At 7:45, the firm footsteps of Arthur Henry echo down the granite staircase that connects the 3 floors of the mansion. At 45, he is impeccably dressed, even in the most mundane moments. This March morning, he wears a navy blue suit from the Italian brand Brioni, a white Egyptian cotton shirt, and a burgundy silk tie from Tom Ford. His black hair, already sprinkled with grey at the temples, is perfectly styled with gel. Arthur has lived alone in this mansion since the death of his wife Clara 3 years ago. The house, once filled with laughter and lively conversations, has become a silent mausoleum where each room echoes memories of a past he prefers not to revisit. His routine is mathematical. He wakes up at 7, showers, gets dressed, has breakfast reading the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and leaves for the office at 8:15. "Good morning, Ella. Is the coffee ready?" he asks, entering the kitchen where the staff is organizing her morning meal on a carefully arranged tray. "Good morning, Mr. Arthur. Everything is ready. The coffee is brewed. Recently warm French bread, Mrs. Davis's strawberry jam, mozzarella and prosciutto, just the way you like it." Arthur doesn't pay attention to the girl sitting in the corner of the breakfast nook. To him, Isabella is just a silent presence that is part of the household routine, like an extra piece of furniture he has learned to ignore. He picks up the folded newspaper that Ella always leaves next to the cup and walks toward the dining room. However, on this Thursday morning, March 15th, Arthur's meticulous routine will be shattered by a moment that will forever change the dynamics of that house. Isabella observes everything. Her eyes capture every detail, the way Arthur furrows his brow while reading the economic news, how he drums his fingers on the table when he is worried, the way he breathes more heavily when he receives calls from the office. Having lived in that house for 8 months, the girl has created a mental map of each person's habits, especially of the man she considers the owner of everything around her. On this particular morning, something is different. Arthur has received 3 consecutive calls even before finishing his breakfast. His voice, usually controlled and assertive, carries a tension that Isabella identifies with the precision of a seismograph detecting imperceptible tremors. "Sergio, I've already told you I'm not going to accept that ridiculous offer from Martins and Associates," Arthur says on the phone, pacing back and forth in the dining room. "If they want to buy our stake in the distributors in the Midwest, they need to present a decent offer. $3.5 million is a joke." Ella, discreetly organizing the utensils in the breakfast nook, notices her boss's nervousness. In 3 years of working in this house, she has learned to read Arthur Henry's mood signals like a meteorologist predicting storms. And today, there is definitely a storm brewing. "Mom," Isabella whispers for the first time that morning, startling Ella. "What is it, dear?" "The man is angry." "It's not our concern, Isa. Keep drawing." But Isabella can't concentrate on her drawings. There is something in Arthur's energy that deeply unsettles her. She closes her notebook and watches through the crack of the door that separates the breakfast nook from the dining room. Arthur finishes the call and immediately dials another contact. "Carlos, Arthur Henry, I need you to move today's meeting to this morning. Yes, now. The situation has changed." He checks the Rolex Submariner on his left wrist. "It's 8:10. I can be there by 9:30, at the latest 10. The businessman hangs up the phone and rushes up the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time. On the second floor, Isabella hears the sound of drawers being opened and closed forcefully. Quick footsteps in the hallway, and then the unmistakable sound of the shower turning on in the master suite. "Ella!" Arthur shouts from upstairs. "I need you to prepare my brown folder, the one from Hermes. It's in the office, on the mahogany table. Put all the merger documents that are in the right drawer." "I'm on it, Mr. Arthur," Ella replies, quickly wiping her hands on her apron. "Isa, you stay here quietly. Mommy will be right back," she instructs, kissing her daughter's forehead before heading up the stairs. For the first time in 8 months, Isabella is completely alone in the breakfast nook. The silence of the house feels denser, heavier. She can hear the distant sound of the shower, Ella's hurried footsteps in the office on the second floor, and something else, a muffled conversation between Mrs. Davis and Mr. Armando in the sunroom. "I didn't like the way he is today," Mrs. Davis comments, watering the orchids that decorate the glass-enclosed porch. "3 years working here, and I've never seen Mr. Arthur so nervous." "Rich people's money problems, Davis. We'll never understand these things," Mr. Armando replies, pruning the dry branches of a fern. "Rich or poor, stress is stress. And that man is carrying the world on his shoulders." Isabella gets up from her chair for the first time that morning. Her bare feet, she always takes off her shoes when she sits down to draw, touch the cold ceramic floor of the breakfast nook. There is a growing urgency inside her chest, a feeling she cannot name, but that compels her to move. She hears the sound of the shower being turned off, then the hairdryer running for a few minutes. Arthur's footsteps return to the bedroom, where he is surely getting dressed for the unexpected meeting. "Ella, the folder!" he shouts again, and his voice carries an irritation that Isabella has never heard before. The girl walks to the door that separates the breakfast nook from the dining room. Her small hands slowly push the cherrywood door, and she peeks into the room. The table where Arthur had breakfast is still set exactly as Ella left it. The white porcelain cup with gold trim rests on the saucer, with a small coffee stain at the bottom, the plate with crumbs of French bread. Arthur's phone, an iPhone 13 Pro Max, vibrates incessantly on the table. Arthur's footsteps descending the stairs echo through the house like distant thunder. He is coming fast, very fast. Isabella knows she should return to her chair in the breakfast nook, but something keeps her standing at the door, watching. Arthur appears at the top of the staircase carrying a brown leather folder in his hands, already dressed in another suit, this one charcoal grey, and a teal tie that perfectly matches his English Oxford shoes. His hair is still slightly damp, and she can smell the scent of the men's cologne he wears, something expensive, striking, reminiscent of wood and spices. It is at this moment that it happens. Arthur descends the stairs with excessive haste. On the 15th granite step, his right foot. He slips slightly, perhaps because of the smooth soles of his freshly polished shoes, perhaps due to the rush, perhaps from the accumulated nervousness of the morning. To regain his balance, he makes a sudden movement with his hands, and the leather briefcase opens, spilling dozens of documents down the staircase. "Damn it!" Arthur curses. The first time Isabella hears him use a word her mother always says that a well-mannered girl shouldn't say. The papers fly like dry leaves in a gale. Contracts, spreadsheets, financial reports, colourful graphs scatter across the polished granite steps. Some sheets slide all the way to the ground floor, while others get stuck between the balusters of the staircase. Arthur stops, in the middle of the stairs, looking at the mess with a desperate expression that would break the heart of anyone watching him. He checks his watch again. It's 8:22. If he leaves now and faces the New York traffic, he will be late for the meeting that could determine the future of his company. "Ella! Ella!" he shouts, but there is no response. The employee is still on the second floor, searching for other documents in the office. It is in this moment of total vulnerability that Isabella acts, the girl who has never approached any adult besides her mother, who has never spoken a word to Arthur Henry in 8 months of coexistence, walks decisively toward the stairs. Her bare feet make no sound on the marble floor. Arthur is crouched down, trying to gather the most important papers, when he feels a presence beside him. He looks up and sees Isabella standing just inches away from him. The girl bends down and, with careful movements, begins to collect the scattered documents. "No, you don't have to," Arthur starts, but stops mid-sentence. Isabella lifts her eyes and looks directly at him for the first time. Her brown eyes are no longer expressionless. There is something there, a depth, an understanding that completely disarms the businessman used to negotiating with seasoned executives and international investors. The girl steps closer. She extends her small hand, and with a naturalness that is both disconcerting and comforting, adjusts Arthur's teal silk tie, which had gone askew during the incident on the stairs. "Daddy," Isabella whispers, her clear and sweet voice breaking the silence like the first ray of sunshine after a storm. "You forgot to say good morning to me." The world stops. Arthur Henry, a man accustomed to making decisions that move millions of dollars, who runs a company with over 200 employees, who has negotiated contracts in 3 different languages and closed business deals in 5 countries, stands completely paralyzed. The tie adjusted by Isabella's tiny hands suddenly feels heavy as an iron chain. Arthur's heart beats so loudly that he is sure the girl can hear it. His hands tremble imperceptibly. I, he stammers, unable to form a coherent sentence. From the second floor comes the sound of hurried footsteps. Ella has finally found the documents she was looking for and is coming down the stairs. When she reaches the ground floor and sees the scene, her daughter touching the boss with an intimacy she has never shown anyone, Arthur standing like a statue, papers scattered on the floor, she lets out a deep sigh that seems to carry the weight of years of kept secrets. "Isabella," Ella calls, her voice laden with an emotion she tries to disguise. "Come here, dear." But Isabella does not move. Her small hands still hold Arthur's tie, and her eyes remain fixed on his face with an intensity that is almost supernatural. "Daddy is late," the girl observes, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Arthur swallows hard. The word "daddy" echoes in his mind like an echo that multiplies infinitely. For the first time in 3 years, since Clara's death, he feels something he cannot immediately identify. Is it fear? Is it relief? Is it a deep longing for something he never had? "Isabella," Ella repeats more firmly now, "let go of Dr. Arthur and come here." Finally, the girl releases the tie and takes a step back, but her eyes remain fixed on Arthur, as if she is engraving every feature of his face in her memory. "Thank you," Arthur manages to murmur, his voice hoarse and different. "Thank you for your help." Isabella smiles. It's a small, almost imperceptible smile, but it's the first smile anyone in that house has seen in 8 months, and it is directed exclusively at him. From that moment on, nothing will be the same in the Upper West Side mansion. Arthur arrives at the office 45 minutes late for the most important meeting of the quarter. The commercial building on Fifth Avenue buzzes with the morning energy of New York business. But he crosses the Carrara marble lobby as if walking in slow motion. His mind cannot disconnect from the image of Isabella adjusting his tie with the naturalness of someone performing a familiar ritual. "Daddy, you forgot to say good morning to me." The words echo in his head as the elevator rises to the 13th floor where Henry Holdings is located. His company, founded 15 years ago with a bank loan and a lot of hard work, now controls a network of distributors serving all of upstate New York and part of southern New Jersey. But at this moment, looking at his reflection in the mirrored elevator doors, Arthur feels like a man who has just discovered he does not know his own identity. "Arthur, where have you been? The folks from Martins and Associates have been in the meeting room for half an hour," exclaims Dr. Stephen Miller as soon as he sees his partner emerging from the elevator. Stephen is 15 years older than Arthur and was the one who guided him in his early steps in the business world. A lawyer specializing in mergers and acquisitions, he has completely white hair slicked back and wears titanium-framed glasses that cost more than a budget car. Arthur's presence always conveys confidence and experience, qualities that he usually values highly, but today they seem to only intensify his internal confusion. "Sorry, Stephen, I had an unexpected issue at home," Arthur replies, loosening the tie that still carries the gentle touch of Isabella's hands. "Unexpected? You never have unexpected issues. Your life is more organized than NASA's schedule," Stephen quips, but his expression shows genuine concern. "Is everything okay?" How can he explain that a 6-year-old girl, whom he barely noticed existed, has just revolutionized his perception of fatherhood with a single phrase? How can he admit that for the first time in 3 years he felt something beyond the constant emptiness that settled in his chest since Clara's death? "I'm fine. Let's go to the meeting." The conference room at Henry Holdings impresses any visitor. A Brazilian rosewood table for 20 dominates the space, flanked by Italian leather chairs. The glass walls offer a panoramic view of the city, where skyscrapers blend with the greenery of Central Park in the distance. Today, 3 executives from Martins and Associates are waiting, sipping coffee from French porcelain cups and flipping through leather-bound proposals. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the delay," Arthur says, taking his place at the head of the table. "We can begin." For the next 2 hours, he tries to focus on the numbers, projections, and contractual clauses. The merger proposal involves the sale of 60% of the distributors in the Midwest for $8.5 million, an amount that would allow Henry Holdings to expand into new markets in the Midwest. It's an opportunity he has planned for 2 years, but his mind keeps trailing back, returning to the mansion's living room, to those brown eyes that seem to carry an ancient wisdom too profound for a child. "So, Dr. Arthur, can we consider that we have an agreement?" asks Ricardo Martins, the CEO of the buying company. Arthur blinks, realizing he has missed the last 15 minutes of the conversation. Stephen watches him with an expression that mixes surprise and alarm. "I need to analyze some details with my team. We'll resume the conversation next week," he replies, abruptly standing up from his chair. The executives exchange glances, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden change in behavior from the businessman known for his objectivity and quick decisions. After the meeting ends, Stephen stays in the room, waiting for the visitors to leave. "Arthur, in 30 years of partnership, I've never seen you act like this. What the hell is going on?" "Stephen, do you have children?" The question catches the lawyer off guard. "I have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Why? How did you know you wanted to be a father?" "What kind of conversation is this, Arthur? You and Clara tried to have children for years. You even went through fertility treatments." I know. But when did you first feel that paternal instinct? How does that work?" Stephen takes off his glasses and carefully cleans them, buying time to process the strange direction the conversation has taken. "Well, with my first child, it was gradual. The responsibility grew during Marissa's pregnancy. But there was a specific moment when he was born, and the doctor placed that little being in my arms. It was as if a switch had been flipped inside me." He pauses. "Why these questions? What if that feeling suddenly appeared without warning?" "Arthur, you're worrying me. Did something happen that I need to know about?" Arthur walks to the window and observes the movement of the city below. Tiny cars navigating the avenues like organized ants, people rushing to appointments, life following its fast pace while he feels that his personal world has just been turned upside down. There's a girl at my house, Mrs. Johnson's daughter, my housekeeper. She's been coming over for a few months, and this morning she called me Daddy. And I felt as if she really were my daughter. The silence that follows is heavy as lead. Stephen puts his glasses back on and looks at his partner with an expression that Arthur cannot decipher. Arthur, you've been through a lot of trauma with Clara's loss. It's natural for your mind to seek ways to fill that void, but projecting paternal feelings onto a child you barely know... It's not projection, Arthur interrupts, turning abruptly. Stephen, I know how this sounds. I know it seems crazy, but when she touched my tie and said those words, it was as if a part of me that had been asleep for years suddenly woke up. She touched you? Adjusted my tie, like a daughter would do for her father before he leaves for work. Stephen stands up and walks over to where Arthur is standing. Listen, you need a vacation. You're working too much, sleeping too little, eating poorly. When was the last time you took a real break? It's not exhaustion, Stephen. Then what do you think it is? Arthur has no answer to that question, or maybe he does, but he's not ready to verbalize it. The rest of the day passes in slow motion. Internal meetings, calls to suppliers, analysis of financial reports, all executed with automatic competence, while a part of his mind remains in the mansion on the Upper West Side. At 6 in the evening, when he would normally stay in the office until 9 working on spreadsheets and strategies, Arthur grabs the keys to the black Audi A8 and begins the drive home. The traffic on the West Side Highway is heavy as always, but he doesn't get irritated by the slowness. For the first time in years, he feels a strange anxiety to get home, not because of the usual loneliness, but for something completely different. During the 45-minute journey, his mind reconstructs every second of the morning encounter with Isabella, the way she approached without fear, how her small fingers adjusted the tie with precision, the crystal-clear clarity of her voice saying, "Daddy," as if that word had always belonged to her. When he finally parks in the mansion's garage, it's 7:15 in the evening. The house. The kitchen is lit from within, and through the windows he can see Mrs. Davis preparing dinner. It would be normal to enter through the front door and follow his usual routine. Shower, have dinner alone in the dining room while reading emails on his tablet, then spend a few hours in the office before bed. But today, something compels him to enter through the back door. The kitchen is fragrant with the aroma of a beef stew that Mrs. Davis is seasoning with herbs from Mr. Anderson's garden. The housekeeper looks up, surprised by the unexpected entrance of her boss. "Good evening, Dr. Arthur. Is everything all right?" "Good evening, Mrs. Davis. Yes, everything is fine. Is Ella still here?" "She just left a little while ago, taking the girl. They always leave at 7 o'clock. A pang of disappointment crosses Arthur's chest. He had unconsciously created an expectation of reuniting with Isabella, perhaps exchanging a few words, understanding better what had happened that morning. The girl. How did she behave during the day? Mrs. Davis stops stirring the stew and watches him with curiosity. "Why the interest, Doctor?" "Just curiosity. She always seems so quiet." "Well, today was different. For the first time since she started coming here, she left the pantry. She spent some time in the sunroom with Mr. Anderson, then asked her mother to show her the library." "The library?" Arthur hasn't visited that room in 2 years. Since Clara's death, the shelves full of books they collected together have become too painful a memorial to frequent. Ella said the girl was fascinated by all those books. She asked if there were any about Brazilian history. "And are there?" "Yes, there are. You and Mrs. Clara bought a beautiful collection about the colonial period, remember? Those books with colourful illustrations? Arthur remembers. Clara was a history teacher before they got married and loved books with detailed illustrations. They spent a fortune on a special edition about the arrival of the Portuguese royal family in Brazil. Does the girl know how to read? Yes, she does. Very well. Ella said she read some passages aloud with perfect pronunciation. Something warm spreads through Arthur's chest. Pride? But pride in what? Isabella is not his daughter. He doesn't even know her well. After having dinner alone, as always, Arthur goes upstairs to the second floor and stops in front of the library door. His hands hesitate on the golden doorknob for almost a full minute before finally opening the door. The room remains exactly as Clara left it. Mahogany shelves from floor to ceiling, a reading chair positioned near the window, a side table where she used to leave open books and notebooks with notes. The smell of old paper and polished wood immediately transports him to lazy afternoons spent together, her reading, him working on the laptop. But today, there is something different. On the side table, someone left open the book, The Court in Brazil, exactly on the page, showing the illustration of the landing of King John VI at the port of Rio de Janeiro. Next to the book, a sheet of paper with a drawing made in coloured pencil. Arthur approaches and examines the drawing. It is clearly the work of a child, but with a richness of detail that surprises him. The scene depicts a family, father, mother, and a girl, walking hand in front of a large house. It is not the typical representation of children's drawings, with disproportionate figures and random colours. There is a harmony in the proportions, a careful choice of colours, an attention to detail that reveals early talent. But what really catches his attention is the man in the illustration, tall, dark-haired, wearing something that looks very much like a suit. And the girl next to him has brown braids and holds his hand with a smile that radiates from the page. In the lower right corner, in carefully traced letters, it reads, "For the daddy who forgot to say good morning, Isabella." Arthur sinks into the reading chair, holding the drawing as if it were a legal document of inestimable value. For the first time since Clara's death, he cries. These are not tears of sadness, but something more complex, a mix of emotion, confusion, and a hope he does not dare name. Outside, the city of New York continues its nighttime dance of lights and movement. But inside the silent library of the Upper West Side mansion, a man has just discovered that the human heart has compartments that can remain locked for years and be opened by a single word spoken by a child. The next morning, Friday, Arthur wakes up at 5:45, 15 minutes earlier than usual. For the first time in 3 years, it is not the alarm clock that pulls him from sleep, but a strange, almost adolescent anxiety about reuniting with Isabella. During his shower, he finds himself imagining how he would greet her properly, perhaps even returning the good morning she mentioned, forgetting the day before. He dresses with more care than usual. A charcoal grey Armani suit, a light blue shirt, and a burgundy silk tie, the same one that Isabella's small fingers adjusted so naturally. As he ties the knot of his tie in front of the closet mirror, his hands tremble imperceptibly. The mansion is still silent when he goes down to the pantry at 7:15. Mrs. Davis is already in the kitchen preparing breakfast, but Ella and Isabella have not yet arrived. The wall clock reads 7:18 when he hears the familiar sound of the back doorbell. "Good morning, Ella. Good morning, Isabella," Mrs. Davis greets as the two enter through the kitchen door. Arthur, sitting at the pantry table, something unprecedented in his morning routine, lifts his eyes from the newspaper he pretended to be reading and observes the girl. Isabella is wearing the same impeccable school uniform, the same perfect braids, but today there was something different in her eyes. When their gazes met, she didn't look away immediately as she always did. "Good morning," he said, addressing the girl specifically. Ella paused in the middle of the motion of hanging her bag on the wall hook. In 8 months working in the house with her daughter, she had never seen her boss greet Isabella directly. "Good morning, Dad," Isabella replied with the same naturalness as the previous morning, as if this were a routine established for years. Arthur's heart raced, but this time he was prepared for the emotion. He smiled, a genuine smile that surprised even Mrs. Davis, used to her boss's perpetual seriousness. "You made a very nice drawing yesterday. I found it in the library." Isabella's eyes lit up. "Did you like it?" "I liked it a lot. You draw very well for a 6-year-old. I've been drawing since I was little. Mom says I was born with a pencil in my hand." It was the longest conversation Isabella had with anyone, besides her mother, since she started coming to the house. Ella watched everything in silence, her expression a mix of joy and concern. "Do you like books?" Arthur asked. "I like them a lot. Yesterday, Mom showed me those books about ancient America. There are many beautiful pictures. If you want, you can borrow any book from the library. I know you will take good care of them." Isabella smiled, the second smile anyone had seen from her in 8 months, and again directed exclusively at Arthur. "Can I really?" "Yes, that's what books are for, to be read." At that moment, Ella approached the table. "Dr. Arthur, if you'll allow me, I need to discuss something important with you." There was something in Ella's voice that made Arthur realize the conversation wasn't about schedules or household tasks. "Of course, Ella. Can we talk privately?" "Isabella, go to the pantry and start drawing. Mommy will be right there," Ella instructed. The girl obeyed without questioning, but before leaving the kitchen, she stopped next to Arthur, and again, with that disarming spontaneity, adjusted his tie. "Now it's just right for work, Dad." After Isabella left, a heavy silence settled between Arthur and Ella. The usually confident and straightforward employee showed a nervousness he had never noticed before. "Dr. Arthur, I need to explain a few things about Isabella." "I'm listening." "Did you notice she's been different since yesterday?" "I did. More communicative. It's just that she's never behaved this way with anyone. Not even with me is she so affectionate." Arthur frowned. "What do you mean?" Ella took a deep breath before continuing. "Isabella is not a normal child, Doctor. She has some peculiarities that I've never been able to explain properly." "What kind of peculiarities?" "She's very intelligent, too intelligent for her age. She learned to read by herself at 4. She speaks some words in other languages that I never taught her, and she has a memory that is frightening." "Frightening how?" "She remembers entire conversations she overheard months ago. She can repeat them word for word, and she has a way of observing people that is almost unsettling." Arthur leaned back in his chair, processing the information. "And her father?" The question made Ella visibly pale. Her hands clenched and opened nervously. "She doesn't have a father, Doctor. Never has. Ella, children don't come into the world without a father." "I know, Doctor, but—" Ella's voice faltered. "The situation is complicated." "Complicated how?" Ella walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the garden where Mr. Anderson was already working among the morning plants. The aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the breeze that brought the scent of flowers beginning to bloom with the approach of autumn in New Jersey. "Dr. Arthur, can I ask you a somewhat personal question?" "Sure." "Have you ever felt like you knew someone, even though you had never seen that person before?" The question hit Arthur like a punch to the stomach. That was exactly what he felt yesterday when Isabella adjusted his tie. An inexplicable familiarity, as if it were a reunion rather than a real first meeting. "Why do you ask?" Because Isabella told me something yesterday that left me speechless. What? She said you smell like her dad. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. Ella, you said she doesn't have a father. I said she doesn't, but she always talks about a dad that only she knows. Since she was little, I thought it was an imaginary friend, child's play. And what else does she say about this dad? She says he's tall, wears nice clothes, has big warm hands, and that one day he would come back to get her. Arthur abruptly stood up from the chair, walking to the kitchen sink. His hands rested on the granite countertop, and he felt as if the ground were shifting beneath his feet. Ella, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is Isabella your biological daughter? The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Ella closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there were tears glistening. No, doctor, she isn't. The words fell like bricks into still water, creating ripples that spread infinitely. What do you mean? Isabella came into my life 3 years ago. I found her in a shelter in New Jersey, where I worked for a few months as a volunteer. A shelter? Yes, doctor. She was 3 years old when she arrived there. She didn't speak, didn't interact with anyone. The social workers said her parents disappeared under strange circumstances and that she was found alone in a house in New Jersey. Arthur slowly turned to face Ella. And how did she end up with you? I fell in love with that lost little girl. She was so fragile. But at the same time, there was something in her eyes that caught my attention. I started visiting her every day. After a few months, I managed to get temporary custody. And since then, she's been living with you? Yes, but I've never been able to adopt her officially. Because, Ella hesitates. Because what? Because she doesn't have official documents, no birth certificate, no records. It's as if she doesn't exist on paper. Arthur feels his legs weaken. He walks to the chair and sits down again. Ella, do you have any information about her parents? Very little. I know her father's name was Raphael and her mother's name was Marina. They were young, in their 20s. They lived in a rented house in New Jersey, and one day they just disappeared. Disappeared how? The police found the house showing signs of a hasty departure. Clothes scattered, some furniture overturned, but no signs of violence, as if they had fled from something. And Isabella? She was hiding in a closet in the bedroom, with a doll and a piece of bread. Neighbors said she was alone in the house for 2 days before anyone noticed something was wrong. The information accumulates in Arthur's mind, like pieces of a puzzle he can't put together. There's something in this story that doesn't fit. Something that deeply unsettles him. And why didn't you ever tell me this before? Because I didn't think it was important to you. Isabella has always been a quiet child who didn't bother anyone, and because... Ella takes another long pause. Because... what? Because I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that one day someone will come to take her away, scared that they'll find out her situation isn't completely legal. And now, Ella's voice breaks. Now I'm scared that she'll get too attached to you and suffer when she finds out she's not really anyone's daughter. Arthur watches Ella cry silently and feels an increasing urgency to understand the whole truth about Isabella. The girl who yesterday was just a silent presence in his home has now become a mystery that consumes all his thoughts. Ella, do you have photographs of her? Parents, any additional information? I have some things that were in the house when she was found. I kept everything in a box, hoping that one day she would want to see. Can you bring that box? I can, doctor, but can I ask why? Arthur has no rational answer to that question. He just feels an inexplicable compulsion to discover everything about Isabella's origins, as if his own peace of mind depended on it. Because now she is part of my life too. From the kitchen, the soft sound of Isabella humming a melody reaches him, one that Arthur doesn't recognize. It's a sweet, melancholic song that seems to carry nostalgia for something very distant. For the first time, he wonders if a 6-year-old can feel nostalgia for people she barely remembers knowing. Monday arrives, laden with the typical humidity of autumn in New York. Arthur wakes up at 5:30, an hour before the alarm, with his mind already occupied by Ella's promise to bring the box with Isabella's parents' belongings. Over the weekend, he could hardly concentrate on anything other than that revealing conversation in the kitchen. On Saturday, he spent hours in the library observing the books that Clara had meticulously organized by historical periods. He found other drawings by Isabella scattered among the pages, small illustrations of families, houses, and gardens that demonstrated an impressive artistic talent for a 6-year-old. In one of the drawings, he discovered something that deeply disturbed him: a tall male figure in a suit, holding the hand of a girl in front of a house that looked very much like his mansion. The drawing was dated 2 weeks ago, long before the incident on the stairs that changed everything between them. Arthur dresses with even more care that morning. A navy blue suit from Hugo Boss, a white Egyptian cotton shirt, and the same burgundy tie that has become a sort of symbol of his connection with Isabella. His hands tremble slightly as he ties the knot. An anxiety he hasn't felt since the early days of important business meetings at the start of his career. When he goes down to the kitchen at 7 o'clock, he finds a scene that warms him inside. Isabella is already sitting in her usual chair, but this time she isn't drawing. In front of her is one of the books from the library, Traditional Tales of the United States. And she reads softly to herself. "Good morning, Daddy," she says without looking up from the book, as if his arrival were as predictable as the sunrise. "Good morning, Isabella," Arthur replies, sitting down at the table. "What story are you reading?" "The story of Lorelei. Do you know it?" "I do. It's one of the most beautiful legends in our folklore." For the first time, Isabella lifts her eyes from the book and looks at him curiously. "Do you believe in legends?" The question catches him off guard. There is a depth in those brown eyes that makes him feel as if she is testing something more than his knowledge of American folklore. "I believe that every legend has a grain of truth," he replies carefully. "My mother says that some legends are memories that have been lost in time. Your mother is very wise." At that moment, Ella enters the kitchen carrying a shoebox wrapped in brown paper. Her eyes are red, as if she has been crying on the way from home to the mansion. "Dr. Arthur, I brought what you asked for," she says, placing the box on the table with a reverent care. "Isabella, go help Mrs. Davis in the kitchen," Ella instructs. "But I want to stay here with Daddy," the girl protests. The protest surprises everyone. It's the first time Isabella questions her mother's order. Ella and Arthur exchange tense glances. "Isabella, obey your mother," Arthur says gently. "We'll talk more about the book later." The girl reluctantly closes the book and leaves the kitchen, but not before adjusting Arthur's tie again, a gesture that is becoming a morning ritual. When they are alone, Ella opens the box with trembling hands. Inside, there are few objects, but each seems to carry the weight of an interrupted life: some yellowed photographs, a marriage certificate, a notebook, and a small silver picture frame. Arthur picks up the first photograph and feels as if he has received an electric shock. The image shows a young couple in front of a modest middle-class house. The man is tall, with dark, wavy hair and light eyes that convey sharp intelligence. The woman is delicate, with straight blonde hair and a sweet smile that lights up her entire face. But what truly shocks Arthur is the striking resemblance between the man in the photograph and himself at the same age. "My God," he murmurs, holding the photo with visibly trembling hands. "You saw it too, right, Doctor?" "Ella, when was this photo taken?" "It must be from about 8 or 9 years ago. It was stuck to the refrigerator in the house where they found Isabella." Arthur examines other photographs. In one of them, he sees the couple holding a baby, clearly Isabella when she was still very small. In another, the family is at a beach, with the little girl already walking, perhaps a year and a half old. "How do you explain this resemblance?" Arthur asks, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I can't explain it, Doctor. That's why I was so scared when Isabella started calling him Dad. It's as if she recognized something." Arthur picks up the notebook. The handwriting is masculine, organized, with notes that seem to be work-related. Most pages contain numbers, calculations, and names he doesn't recognize. But on one of the last pages, he finds something that makes his blood run cold. Marina is worried. The strange calls continue. Yesterday, a black car was parked in front of the house for 3 hours. "I need to protect my family, but I don't know how. If something happens to us, I hope Isabella finds her way back home. She has always had a special instinct for important people." The note is dated March 2019, just a few months before the couple's disappearance. "Ella, did you read this?" "I did, Doctor, and it gives me chills every time." "What do you think it means?" "I think they were running away from something, or someone." Arthur continues flipping through the notebook and finds another disturbing note. "Isabella asked today if I have a brother. She said she dreamed of a man who looks like me but older. In the dream, he lived in a big house with many books. I tried to explain that it's just imagination, but she insisted it was a memory, not a dream." The note is from February 2019. Isabella was only 3 years old at the time. "Ella," Arthur says, his voice barely a whisper, "I need to investigate this further." "Investigate how?" "I have contacts, people who can help find out what really happened to her parents." At this moment, Isabella returns to the kitchen carrying a cup of coffee that Mrs. Davis clearly asked her to deliver. "Dad, why are you looking at pictures of my real family?" she asks with a naturalness that leaves the adults stunned. Arthur and Ella exchange astonished glances. "Isa," Ella stammers, "how do you know they are pictures of your real family?" "I remember them," the girl replies, approaching the table. "Can I see?" With trembling hands, Arthur hands her the photograph of the couple. Isabella looks at it for a long moment, and her eyes fill with tears. "Dad Raphael and Mom Marina," she whispers. "They left to protect me." "Protect you from what, sweetheart?" Ella asks, sitting next to the girl. "From the bad men who wanted to take me away from them." Arthur feels a chill run down his spine. "Isabella, do you remember the bad men?" The girl nods. "They came in a black car. Dad Raphael got very nervous when they showed up. And do you remember anything else?" Isabella stops looking at the photograph and fixes her eyes on Arthur. "I remember Dad Raphael said that if something happened, I should look for my other dad." "Your other dad?" "He said I would know how to recognize him. When I found him, that he would smell like him, live in a house with many books, and take care of me like he did." The silence that follows is complete. Even the usual sounds of the house seem to have ceased. "Isabella," Arthur says with extreme gentleness, "why do you think I am this other dad?" The girl smiles, a smile that mixes childhood innocence with a wisdom that shouldn't exist in a 6-year-old. "Because when you are near me, I feel at home again." The phrase hits Arthur like a lightning bolt. He abruptly stands up, walks to the window, and leans his hands on the sill, trying to process everything he has heard. "Dr. Arthur," Ella says softly, "are you okay?" He turns, and there are tears in his eyes. "Ella, I need to make some urgent calls. Can you stay with Isabella today?" "Of course, doctor." "Isabella," he calls, turning to the girl, "would you like to spend the day here with me? We can read more books in the library." Isabella's eyes light up like stars. "Can I, really?" "Yes, you can. Today is a special day." As Isabella runs to get her colored pencils, Arthur approaches Ella. "I need to uncover the whole truth about this family. There's something in this story that goes beyond coincidences. And what if you discover things you didn't want to know?" Arthur looks in the direction where Isabella disappeared, hearing the sound of her quick footsteps on the stairs. "Then I will face the consequences, because now she is my responsibility too." From upstairs, the sound of Isabella's sweet voice, humming the same melancholic melody he heard on Friday, reaches him. But today, for the first time, Arthur recognizes the song. It's a lullaby that his own mother used to sing to him when he was a child, a song he never taught to anyone, and that died with her 15 years ago. Arthur cancels all morning meetings and makes 3 crucial calls from his private office in the mansion. The first is to Dr. Stephen Miller, asking for contacts of private detectives specializing in missing persons cases. The second is to a criminal lawyer who represents high-profile business people in New York. The third, the most difficult, is to his sister Helen, who has been living in Portugal for 15 years. "Helen, I need you to tell me everything you know about our family," he says, skipping any preliminary greetings. "Arthur, what time is it there? Are you okay?" His sister responds, clearly surprised by the unexpected call. "I'm fine, but I need urgent information. Did our dad have any brothers? Any cousins? Any relatives who might have had children? Why this sudden curiosity about genealogy?" "Helen, it's serious. Could there be a relative of ours that we lost contact with?" On the other end of the line, Helen takes a long pause. "Arthur, there's something I never told you because Mom made me promise to keep it a secret." Arthur's heart races. "What is it?" "Our dad had a twin brother." The words echo in the office like a gunshot. Arthur stands up from the leather chair and walks to the window overlooking the garden, where he can see Isabella playing among the azaleas under the loving supervision of Mr. Anderson. "What do you mean, a twin brother?" "Identical twins. His name was Robert, but they had a falling out when they were young, even before I was born. Mom said it was a nasty fight over money and a woman. And what happened to him? He vanished. From New York, Mom heard from mutual acquaintances that he moved to the coast to a house in New Jersey. He got married, had children, but they never kept in touch." Arthur feels his legs weaken. A house in New Jersey, the same place where Isabella was found alone in an abandoned house. "Helen, do you know if he had any sons?" "I think so. Mom mentioned once that she heard he had a son, but that was a long time ago. Why all these questions?" "I need to hang up now, Helen. I'll explain everything later." After ending the call, Arthur remains at the window watching Isabella. The girl has found a patch of daisies and is making a small flower crown with impressive skill for her age. Her movements are delicate, precise, and there is a serene concentration on her face that reminds him of someone. He remembers Clara. His wife had exactly the same expression when she worked in her herb gardens on the balcony of their old apartment. The same patience, the same delicacy with the plants, the same way of slightly tilting her head when she was absorbed in a manual task. An hour later, the private detective recommended by Stephen arrives at the mansion. Carlos Mendoza is 50 years old, has grey hair, and a presence that inspires confidence. A former investigator with the civil police, he specialized in missing persons cases after retiring from public service. "Mr. Henry, Your partner briefly explained the situation to me. You want to investigate the disappearance of a child's parents? Exactly, but there are complications. Arthur hands him a copy of the photographs that Ella brought. This man could be the son of my father's twin brother. Carlos examines the photos with professional attention. The resemblance is truly striking. When did the disappearance occur? March 2019, in a house in New Jersey. The child was found alone in a house, without official documents. And where is she now? Here with me. The staff member who was taking care of her brought me some belongings from her parents. Arthur hands over the notebook with Raphael's notes. Carlos reads the marked pages in silence, progressively frowning. Mr. Henry, these notes suggest that the family was being pursued. This could be more complicated than a simple missing persons case. What do you mean? Strange cars, anonymous calls, explicit fear for the family's safety. This has the characteristics of witness protection or fleeing from serious threats. At this moment, Isabella enters the office carrying her daisy crown. She stops at the door, observing the unfamiliar man with the same analytical expression she uses to study everything around her. "Daddy, who is this man?" she asks directly to Carlos, surprising him with her poise. "I'm Carlos, a friend of your dad," the detective replies, looking at Arthur for guidance on how to refer to their relationship. Isabella approaches and extends the flower crown to Arthur. "I made this for you. Daisies are flowers of people who protect others." "How do you know that?" Carlos asks, intrigued. "Dad Raphael taught me. He said that each flower has a special meaning." Carlos and Arthur exchange significant glances. "Isabella," Arthur says gently, "do you remember other things Dad Raphael taught you?" The girl sits in a nearby armchair, carefully arranging her plaid skirt. "He taught me that important people sometimes need to hide to protect those they love." "And did he say you were hiding?" "He didn't say it in those words, but I knew. Mom Marina always looked out the window before leaving the house, and Dad Raphael changed the locks 3 times. Carlos writes down every word in a small notebook. "Isabella, do you remember any names your parents mentioned? Anyone they were afraid of?" The girl remains silent for a long moment, as if navigating through deep memories. "There's one name that Mom Marina whispered to Dad Raphael. They thought I couldn't hear, but I did." "What name?" "Colonel Sanders." Carlos's expression changes instantly. He stops writing and looks directly at Arthur. "Mr. Henry, we need to talk privately." Arthur asks Isabella to go help Mrs. Davis in the kitchen, promising that they will read more books together later. When they are alone, Carlos closes the notebook with a sharp motion. "Mr. Henry, do you know who Colonel Sanders is?" "I've never heard that name." Eduardo Sanders was a colonel in the army, expelled from the corps in 2015 for involvement in smuggling at the border with Paraguay. Since then, he commands a trafficking network that operates between a house in New Jersey, New York, and the countryside. Arthur feels the blood drain from his face. And what would be his connection to Isabella's family? That's what I need to find out. But if this child is a witness to something involving Sanders, she could be in danger. What do you mean, in danger? Sanders doesn't leave loose ends, Dr. Henry. If her parents discovered something compromising and managed to hide the girl before disappearing. Carlos doesn't finish the sentence, but Arthur perfectly understands the implication. What do you recommend? First, I will discreetly investigate the couple's disappearance. Second, I suggest you consider reinforcing the security of the house. And third, Carlos pauses, you need to decide how far you are willing to go to protect this child. Through the office window, Arthur can see Isabella in the garden, now helping Mr. Anderson water the plants. She holds the hose with her small hands, laughing as the water splashes on her shoes. It's a scene of pure innocence, but now he knows that behind that sweet laughter lies a horror story that a 6-year-old girl should never have to carry. "Carlos," he finally says, "I will go to the end, no matter the cost. Even if that means confronting dangerous people." Arthur thinks about how Isabella adjusts his tie every morning, the way she calls him Dad, with a naturalness that melts his heart, the smile that appeared on her face when he promised they could read books together, especially if it means that. When Carlos leaves the mansion an hour later, Arthur remains in the office, flipping through photographs of Isabella's family. One of them particularly intrigues him. Raphael, Marina, and little Isabella in a park, all smiling at the camera. But in the background of the image, blurred yet visible, there is a man in sunglasses watching the family from a distance, a man who clearly did not belong to the family scene. Arthur takes a magnifying glass from the drawer and examines the figure more closely. Although he cannot identify the face, he notices that the man is wearing a uniform that resembles military attire. For the first time since Isabella entered his life, Arthur understands that protecting that girl may cost much more than just love and dedication. It may cost his own life. On Wednesday morning, Arthur is awakened at 5 in the morning by a call from Carlos Mendoza. The detective's voice carries an urgency that makes the businessman sit up immediately in bed. "Dr. Henry, I need to see you early today. I've discovered things that completely change the scenario." "What kind of things? I can't talk over the phone. Can you meet me at 7 in the morning, before the girl arrives?" Arthur checks the clock on the nightstand. "Carlos, it's 5 in the morning. What urgency is this?" "The urgency of keeping Isabella alive, Dr. Henry." The grave tone of the response makes Arthur jump out of bed immediately. "I will be waiting." 2 hours later, Carlos arrives at the mansion carrying a folder full of documents and photographs. His eyes show the fatigue of someone who spent the night investigating, but also the satisfaction of someone who found important pieces of a puzzle. "Dr. Henry, you were right about the relationship. Rafael Santos Henry was indeed the son of Roberto Henry, your father's twin brother." Arthur feels a mix of relief and apprehension. "So Isabella is really my great-niece?" "Yes, she is. But this is just the first revelation." Carlos opens the folder and pulls out a series of official documents. Rafael worked as an accountant at an import company in New Jersey. A company that we discovered was a front for smuggling operations run by Colonel Sanders' group. Was Rafael involved in the scheme? Not intentionally. He was hired as a legitimate accountant, but began to notice irregularities in the spreadsheets, values that didn't match, goods entering the country without proper documentation, suspicious financial transactions. Carlos pulls out a photocopy of a handwritten report. Rafael was meticulous. He started documenting everything he considered irregular, thinking about reporting it to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And was he discovered? Yes. In February 2019, Sanders learned that there was an accountant asking too many uncomfortable questions. He sent some thugs to intimidate him. Arthur examines other photographs that Carlos brought. They are surveillance images showing Rafael entering and leaving a commercial building, always watched by men in sunglasses. "Dr. Henry, there's more. Rafael not only discovered the smuggling scheme, he accidentally gained access to information about a much larger operation." "What kind of operation?" "International child trafficking." The words fall like a hammer in the silence of the mansion. Arthur feels as if the ground has disappeared beneath his feet. "What do you mean?" "Sanders used the import company to traffic children between the United States and European countries." Girls between 4 and 8 years old were kidnapped or bought from impoverished families and sent to exploitation networks abroad. Arthur abruptly stands up and walks to the window, trying to process the horrific information. And Raphael discovered this? He discovered it by accident. In one of the spreadsheets, he found codes that did not correspond to goods but to special products with exorbitant values. When he investigated further, he realized they were children. My God! Raphael copied all the files he could and contacted the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But before he could deliver the evidence, he was discovered. Carlos pulls out another photograph from the folder. It is an image of Raphael and Marina hurriedly leaving home, carrying only a few bags. This photo was taken on March 15, 2019. 3 hours later, the Federal Bureau of Investigation raided the import company, but Sanders and his main thugs had already disappeared, and Raphael and Marina too. And Isabella? Isabella was hidden by her parents at a friend's house in New Jersey. She was supposed to stay there for just a few days until they could get official protection from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but something went wrong. Arthur turns to face Carlos. What went wrong? Isabella's parents. They were kidnapped. Before they could reach the designated meeting place with the federal agents, the woman who was supposed to take care of Isabella panicked and abandoned the girl at the house. And that's why she was found alone. Exactly. She spent 2 days eating only a piece of bread and drinking tap water until the neighbors noticed something was wrong. Arthur returns to the chair and sits down, resting his head in his hands. Carlos, are her parents alive or dead? That's the million-dollar question, Dr. Henry. No bodies have ever been found, but they have also never been seen again. Outside, Arthur hears the familiar sound of the back doorbell. Ella and Isabella have arrived for another day of routine that he now knows is anything but routine. Dr. Henry, there's something I need to warn you about. If Sanders finds out that Isabella is alive and where she is, what happens? She is the only witness who can connect the disappearance of her parents to his scheme. Even as a child, even not fully understanding what she saw, she represents a threat. Arthur hears the familiar footsteps of Isabella walking through the house, probably heading straight to the kitchen. To grab her colored pencils and sketchbook. Carlos, what do you recommend? First, immediate reinforcement of security. Second, consider relocating Isabella until we resolve the situation. And third, Carlos hesitates. Third what? Maybe it's time to officially hand the case over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and risk losing her to the protection system. It's better than risking losing her to Sanders. At that moment, the office door opens, and Isabella enters carrying her daisy crown from the previous day, now a bit wilted but still beautiful. "Good morning, Dad," she says with her morning smile. "I brought the crown I made yesterday. Is it still pretty?" Arthur watches her, hair neatly braided, impeccable school uniform, eyes shining with the simple joy of a child who has found safety, and feels a fierce determination grow in his chest. "It's beautiful, Isabella, just like you." The girl approaches and, as always, carefully adjusts his tie. But today, Carlos observes the ritual and furrows his brow. "Isabella," the detective says gently, "may I ask you a question?" "Sure." "Why do you fix your dad's tie every morning?" Isabella looks at Carlos with that expression of someone deciding whether to trust a new person. After a moment, she replies, "Dad Raphael always asked me to fix his tie before he left for work. He said it was my job to make sure he looked nice." The simple and innocent explanation makes Carlos understand something that had previously escaped him. "Isabella, do you remember other tasks that Dad Raphael gave you?" "To remember if all the windows were closed before sleeping, to watch for strange cars on the street, and to keep important secrets." Carlos leans forward. What kind of secrets? Isabella looks at Arthur, as if asking for permission. He nods encouragingly. Dad Raphael taught me special numbers. He said that if anything bad happened, I should tell the numbers to good people who could help. Arthur and Carlos exchange tense glances. Do you still remember those numbers? Carlos asks very carefully. Isabella nods. They're the numbers of the account where Dad Raphael kept evidence of the bad men. The silence that follows is absolute. Isabella, Arthur says, his voice heavy with emotion, you are a very brave and very smart girl. Dad Raphael said I was the most important person in the family because I could keep secrets better than any adult. Carlos closes his briefcase and stands up. Dr. Henry, we need to talk more, but not here, not now. After arranging a meeting for the afternoon, Carlos leaves, leaving Arthur alone with Isabella. The girl, unaware of the gravity of the revelations she just made, pulls Arthur by the hand toward the library. Dad, can you tell me the story of Lorelei again? I forgot how she became a mermaid. As he walks with Isabella through the halls of the mansion, Arthur realizes that his life has changed irrevocably. He has not only gained an unexpected family, but also inherited a responsibility that could cost him everything he has built. But watching Isabella's small hand holding his with complete trust, he knows there is no choice to be made. He will fight for her until the end, even if it means confronting demons he had preferred to believe did not exist. On Thursday afternoon, Arthur makes the most difficult decision of his business life. He indefinitely cancels the merger with Martins and Associates. The call to Dr. Stephen is tense and filled with questions he cannot fully answer. Arthur, have you lost your mind? We've worked 2 years on this deal, exclaims Stephen on the other end of the line. Stephen, I have urgent personal matters that require my full attention. Personal matters? You haven't had personal matters in 3 years. Now I do, and they are more important than any business. The silence on the line reveals the shock of the partner. Knowing Arthur for decades, Stephen knows that nothing has ever surpassed business on the entrepreneur's priority list. Arthur, does this have to do with that child you mentioned? It has everything to do with her. My friend, I know you're going through an emotional time, but you can't let feelings compromise rational decisions. Stephen, for the first time in my life, feelings are exactly what should guide my decisions. After hanging up, Arthur finds Isabella in the library, sitting in the reading chair where Claire used to spend her afternoons. The girl has an atlas of the United States on her lap and is tracing with her finger the route between New York and a house in New Jersey. Dad, how long does it take to drive from here to the house in New Jersey? The question catches him off guard. Why do you want to know? I'm trying to remember how long Dad Raphael drove when we went to the beach. Arthur sits in the chair next to her. During the week, since the first "Good morning, Dad," he learned that Isabella's seemingly innocent questions always carry deeper layers. Did you go to the beach often? We went every Sunday when Dad Raphael wasn't worried about work. Isabella turns a page in the atlas. But in the last few months, he kept looking in the rearview mirror the whole way. Why did he do that? He thought someone was following us. The naturalness with which she recounts disturbing memories continues to impress Arthur. It's as if Isabella's 6-year-old mind had developed mechanisms to process trauma without completely breaking down. Isabella, do you miss the house in New Jersey? The girl closes the atlas and looks at him with those brown eyes that seem to carry infinite depth. I miss Mom and Dad, but I don't miss the fear. What kind of fear? Fear of strange men who were watching our house. Fear of the phone calls that made Mom Marina cry. Fear of Dad Raphael having to leave early in the morning for work and not coming. Back, Isabella opens the atlas to a page showing the map of New York. Here I don't feel afraid. Here I feel safe. The statement warms Arthur's heart, but also intensifies the weight of responsibility he feels growing every day. Isabella, if I asked you what those special numbers Dad Raphael taught you are, would you remember? The girl nods. I remember everything. Dad Raphael said my memory was better than a computer. And would you trust those numbers to me? I trust you more than anyone in the world, she replies, without hesitation. Isabella closes her eyes for a moment, as if accessing a specific mental file. When she opens them, her voice is clear and precise. Bank of America, branch 1247-9, account 896324, password 280219. Dad Raphael said that this account holds documents that can help other children who are in danger. Arthur writes the numbers on a piece of paper, his hands trembling slightly. The date of the password, February 28, 2019, is exactly 2 weeks before the family's disappearance. Isabella, did Dad Raphael explain what kind of documents? He said they were proof that bad men did bad things to children, and that when the right time came, this evidence would help the police catch the bad men. At this moment, Mrs. Davis knocks on the library door. Dr. Arthur, Dr. Charles has arrived. Charles Morgan enters the library carrying a folder even bulkier than the previous one. His eyes show the satisfaction of someone who has had a productive day of investigation. Dr. Henry, I have important news. He stops upon seeing Isabella. Perhaps we should talk privately? No, Arthur says firmly. Isabella is part of this story. She has the right to hear. Charles sits in a chair near the armchairs. Well, Dr. Henry, I managed to contact the FBI agent who was responsible for the Santos Henry family case. And? Agent Ricardo Ferreira confirms everything we discovered. Raphael really had collected enough evidence to take down Colonel Sanders' entire network, but there is a complication. What complication? The case has been closed. Arthur furrows his brow. What do you mean, closed? Without the parents to testify and without access to the evidence Raphael collected, the investigation lost strength. Sanders managed to clean up his operations and disappear. Officially, the case is closed. And unofficially? Unofficially, Agent Ferreira suspects there was a leak within the FBI itself. Someone warned Sanders about the investigation before the operation was launched. Isabella, who had been listening in silence until then, speaks up. Dad Raphael always said there were police officers who worked for the bad men. Charles leans toward her. Isabella, did your father mention names of police officers? The girl nods. He talked about a detective who received money to not investigate certain things, but I don't remember the name. And do you remember other things your father discovered at work? Isabella stands up and walks to one of the library shelves. With the agility of someone who knows every book, she pulls out a world atlas and opens it to a specific page. Dad Raphael showed me on the map the countries where the bad men sent the children. She points to several European countries. Italy, Spain, France. He said that there the Brazilian children were forced to do bad things. Arthur's blood runs cold. The precision with which a 6-year-old girl describes an international human trafficking network is both impressive and terrifying. Isabella, Charles asks gently, do you know how your father discovered this information? He had a friend who worked at the port in New Jersey. The friend saw containers being loaded with children instead of goods. Charles stops writing and looks directly at Arthur. Dr. Henry, this information changes everything. How so? If Isabella is a witness to information about international trafficking routes, she is not just a threat to Sanders, she is a threat to a much larger organization. Arthur feels a chill run down his spine. How much larger? We're talking about a network that could involve politicians, businessmen, high-ranking police officers, people powerful enough to make anyone disappear. Isabella returns to her armchair and takes Arthur's hand. "Dad, are you getting worried?" "I am, sweetheart, but not about you. I'm worried about how to protect you properly. Dad Raphael always said that good people are stronger than bad people when they come together." The girl's innocent observation gives Arthur an idea. "Charles, what if we didn't try to hide Isabella?" "What do you mean?" "What if we made her story public? If we disclose that she is a surviving witness of a trafficking network and that she is under my protection?" Charles considers the suggestion. "It would be risky, but it could work. Once the media knows the story, it would be very difficult for Sanders to act against her without drawing attention." "And the numbers Dad Raphael taught me?" Isabella asks. "Can we use them to help other children?" Arthur looks at Charles. "Yes, Isabella. We will use everything your dad taught you to help other children and to ensure that the bad men are punished." Isabella smiles. Not the shy smile of the early days, but a radiant smile that lights up the entire library. "Dad Arthur would be proud. He always said I was as brave as a warrior princess." Hearing these words, Arthur makes a decision that will change not only his life, but potentially the lives of hundreds of vulnerable children. "Charles, I want you to contact Agent Richards. And I also want you to find the best criminal lawyers in New York. We're going to war." "Are you sure about this, Dr. Henry? Once we start, there's no turning back." Arthur looks at Isabella, who is once again leafing through the atlas, tracing with her finger the routes her father had discovered. A 6-year-old girl carrying in her memories the keys to dismantle one of the worst forms of crime that exist. I am absolutely sure Isabella deserves justice, and the children who are still in danger deserve to be saved. Outside the library, through the windows that overlook the garden, he can see Mr. Anderson watering the flowers that Isabella loves so much. Mrs. Davis walks by the door carrying a tray with afternoon snacks. Ella organizes the pantry, maintaining the domestic routine that has become the safe universe for the girl. For the first time since Claire's death, Arthur understands that a family is not just about blood ties. It's about choosing to protect those you love, regardless of the consequences. And he has chosen Isabella forever. The following Monday, Arthur's life transforms into a dizzying sequence of meetings with lawyers, conversations with journalists, and calls to federal authorities. The office of Henry Holdings becomes a command center for something much larger than business. A battle for justice that could take down an international crime syndicate. Dr. Marina Collins, one of the most respected criminal lawyers in New York, takes on the case after hearing the full account. A 50-year-old woman with graying hair neatly tied in a bun and eyes that show 3 decades of experience with complex cases. She does not hesitate to accept the challenge. "Dr. Henry, I'll be straightforward," she says during the meeting at the company headquarters. "What you are proposing is dangerous. Very dangerous. But it is also the right thing to do. Dr. Collins, what is our real chance of success? With the evidence Isabella can provide, and the bank documents that Arthur left behind, we have a solid foundation. The problem is not legal, it's logistical. Protecting a 6-year-old witness from an organization that has tentacles in various spheres of power." Arthur checks the Rolex on his wrist. It's 4 in the afternoon, and in 2 hours he needs to be back at the mansion for dinner with Isabella, a routine he established during the week that has become the most important moment of his days. "Dr. Collins, I want you to meet Isabella in person. I need you to understand who we are protecting." "That would be essential. When can I meet her? Today, if possible. She will be more comfortable at home, in a familiar environment. 2 hours later, Dr. Marina Collins walks through the gates of the mansion in Upper West Side, accompanied by Charles Morgan and Agent Richards from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a 45-year-old man, bald, with a graying mustache and a presence that conveys seriousness and competence. Arthur greets them in the library, where Isabella is sitting on the Persian rug, surrounded by books on American history and drawing pictures that depict the stories she has just read. She looks up when the adults enter, observing each new face with her characteristic analytical expression. "Isabella," Arthur says gently, "I want to introduce you to some very important people who have come to help us." The girl stands up and smooths the skirt of the navy blue dress that Ella carefully ironed that morning. Her hair is styled in 2 braids, adorned with ribbons matching her dress. "Good morning," she greets politely, but her eyes remain cautious. "Isabella, this is Dr. Collins, who is a lawyer. She helps people solve important problems." Dr. Collins kneels to be at the girl's level. "Hello, Isabella. What beautiful drawings you are making." "I'm drawing the story of Martin Luther King, Jr. Dad told me that he protected people who were treated badly." The response makes the adults exchange meaningful glances. Even at 6 years old, Isabella demonstrates an intuitive understanding of justice and protection. "And this is Agent Richards," Arthur continues. "He is a federal agent and wants to help find your parents." Isabella examines Agent Richards with special attention. "Are you a real police officer or a police officer who works for bad men?" The direct question surprises the agent, but also reveals the forced maturity the girl has developed. "I am a real police officer, Isabella, and I really want to catch the bad men who harmed your family." "Do you believe that children can be important witnesses?" "I do. Sometimes children see things that adults do not notice." Satisfied with the answer, Isabella sits back down on the rug and gestures for everyone to join her, a role reversal that amuses the visitors. "Isabella," Dr. Collins says, sitting on the floor with surprisingly agile movement, "can I ask you some questions about what you remember?" "You can. But first I need to know, are you going to use my memories to help other children who are in danger?" "We will," Agent Richards replies. "There are many children who need help, and your memories could be the key to saving them." Isabella nods approvingly and takes on a more formal posture. "You can ask." During the next hour, the professionals ask carefully crafted questions, and Isabella's answers reveal an impressive photographic memory. She remembers names, dates, physical descriptions of suspicious people, specific conversations between her parents, even license plate numbers of cars that watched the family. "Isabella," asks Carlos, "do you remember if your dad mentioned any names besides Colonel Sanders?" "Yes. He talked about a man named Dr. Adams, who was a doctor and helped forge documents for the children." Agent Ferreira stops writing. "Dr. Adams? Do you remember the full name?" "Dr. Adams Mendez. Dad Raphael said he worked at a hospital in a house in New Jersey and that he made fake birth certificates." "Anyone else?" "A woman named Julia who worked at a daycare and chose the prettiest children for the bad men." Each name Isabella mentions is a piece of evidence that could help reconstruct the entire criminal network. "And do you remember conversations about other countries?" Dr. Marina asks. Isabella stands up and goes to the world atlas she left open on a side table. With surprising precision, she points to several locations. "The children first went to the United States, to a city called Los Angeles, then to Washington, D.C. and Chicago, and some went to New Orleans." "Did your dad explain how they got there?" "On large ships, hidden in containers that looked like they were carrying other things. Dad Raphael saw the fake documents that said they were dolls being exported. The silence that follows the revelation is heavy. Everyone understands they are facing a witness who could help dismantle an international criminal operation. Isabella, Agent Ferreira says gently, you are very brave and very smart. Dad Raphael always said that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing the right thing even when you're scared. The phrase, spoken with the seriousness of a child who has lived experiences far beyond her age, visibly moves everyone present. After the visitors leave, Arthur is left alone with Isabella in the library. The girl returns to her drawings, but he notices a tension in her shoulders that wasn't there before. Isabella, are you okay? I am, Dad. But what? Talking about Dad Raphael and Mom Marina makes me miss them. Arthur sits on the floor beside her. It's natural to miss people we love. Do you think they're alive? The question he has dreaded since the beginning of the investigation. Arthur chooses honesty, believing that Isabella deserves the truth. I don't know, sweetheart, but I know they loved you very much and were proud of the brave girl you are. Isabella stops drawing and looks at him with those brown eyes that carry a premature wisdom. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Of course you can. I dream about them sometimes. In the dream, they say they are okay and that you will take care of me until they come back. Arthur feels tears forming in his eyes. And what do you say in the dream? I say that you are the best dad in the world and that I feel safe with you. At that moment, Ella appears in the doorway of the library. Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Arthur, but there's an urgent call for you. Arthur answers the phone at the library desk. It's Charles Morgan, and his voice carries an alarming urgency. Dr. Henry, I need you to reinforce the security of the house immediately. Why? What happened? Agent Ferreira just received information that Sanders has discovered where Isabella is. Arthur's blood runs cold. How? We don't know yet, but there are indications that he might try something in the next 48 hours. Arthur looks at Isabella, who has returned to drawing, oblivious to the threatening conversation. Charles, what do I need to do? First, don't let Isabella leave the mansion for any reason. Second, hire private security. I have reliable contacts. And third, Charles pauses. Third what? Consider the possibility of taking Isabella to a completely safe location until we capture Sanders. I'm not taking her away from here. This is her home now. Dr. Henry, be rational. Her life may be at risk. Arthur watches Isabella drawing with absolute concentration, completely absorbed in depicting Martin Luther King Jr. protecting his people. The irony of the situation does not escape him. Charles, if Sanders wants war, he will have war, but it will be here, at home, where Isabella feels safe. Are you sure about that? Absolutely. This girl has already lost one family. She will not lose another. After hanging up, Arthur kneels beside Isabella. Sweetheart, how about we stay here at home together for the next few days? We can read all the books in the library. Isabella looks up, and there is something in her expression that suggests she understands more of the situation than he imagines. The bad men found out where I am? The direct question completely disarms him. What makes you think that? Because you have the same worried look that Dad Raphael had in the last days before they left. Arthur decides on total honesty. Yes, Isabella, they found out, but this time it will be different. How so? Different? Because this time you have a dad who isn't going anywhere, and who will protect you no matter what. Isabella smiles and leans in to adjust Arthur's tie, even though he isn't wearing one at that moment, a symbolic gesture that has become her way of saying, I trust you. I'm not scared, Dad, because now I know I'm really home. Outside the mansion, the night falls with its usual lights and incessant movement, But inside the library, a man and a girl seal a silent pact of mutual protection that no external threat can break. The war is about to begin, but this time, love is stronger than fear. In the early hours of Tuesday, Arthur is awakened by a nearly imperceptible noise in the garden. It's 3:40 in the morning, and the mansion should be immersed in absolute silence. He gets out of bed quietly, slips on his leather slippers, and walks to the window of the room that overlooks the back of the property. Under the soft light of the garden spotlights, he sees a dark figure moves between the trees near the wall that separates his property from the neighboring house. His heart races, but it's not panic. It's a cold determination he hasn't felt in years. Arthur grabs his cell phone and calls the security center that Charles recommended. The company installed additional cameras and 2 guards who have been patrolling the property since Monday afternoon. "This is Dr. Henry. There's suspicious activity in the backyard," he whispers into the phone. "We confirm, Doctor. We have 2 individuals who scaled the wall 5 minutes ago. We've already called for backup and the police department. Stay in a safe location." Arthur hangs up and quickly gets dressed. His first priority is not his own safety, but ensuring that Isabella is protected. He knows she is sleeping in the guest room on the 2nd floor, where Ella set her up to be closer during the nights. He walks through the hallways of the mansion with silent steps, the wooden floor occasionally creaking under his feet. When he reaches the room where Isabella sleeps, he finds the door ajar and peeks through the gap. The girl is awake. Sitting on the bed with her knees drawn to her chest, she watches the window with an alert expression that reveals she's fully aware that something is happening. "Isabella," Arthur whispers, entering the room. "Dad, they came, didn't they?" The calmness in her voice impresses him. There's no panic, no tears, just a resignation far too mature for a 6-year-old. "Yes, they did, but this time it will be different." "How so?" Arthur sits on the bed and pulls her into his lap. "Because this time you have an army of good people protecting you." At that moment, they hear noises from outside, male voices, the sound of footsteps running in the yard, followed by the characteristic barking of police dogs. "Dr. Arthur! Isabella!" Ella's voice echoes down the hallway. The staff member rushes toward the room, clearly startled by the external noises. "We're here, Ella," Arthur replies. Ella enters, the room wearing a robe over her pajamas, her disheveled hair showing that she woke up startled. "What's happening?" "They tried to break into the house, but security has controlled the situation." From the yard comes the sound of approaching sirens, followed by commanding voices from the police department. Through the window, they can see red and blue lights reflecting off the trees. "Mom," Isabella says, reaching out her arms to Ella, "the bad men couldn't catch me." "No, my daughter, and they never will," Ella replies, hugging the girl tightly. 15 minutes later, the captain of the police department knocks on the mansion door. Arthur goes down to meet him, leaving Isabella in Ella's care. "Dr. Henry, we managed to apprehend 2 individuals, informs Captain Sanders, a stern-looking man with a neatly trimmed mustache. "They were armed and carrying kidnapping equipment. Ropes, sedatives, masks. It was clearly an operation to take someone." Arthur feels a chill run down his spine. "Did they say anything?" "Not yet, but we found this on them." The captain hands him a folded paper. Arthur opens it and reads a typewritten message. "The girl could cause problems for many important people. It's better if she disappears forever like her parents." "Captain, I need to call some people," Arthur says, trying to control the tremor in his voice. During the next hour, the mansion transforms into an operations center. Charles Morgan arrives, accompanied by Agent Richard Foster and Dr. Marina Collins. They all gather in the living room, while Isabella remains in the bedroom with Ella, seemingly calm despite all the commotion. "Dr. Henry," says Agent Foster, "this kidnapping attempt changes everything. Now we have direct evidence that Sanders is willing to act against the girl." "And what does that mean legally?" Arthur asks. "It means we can request federal protection for Isabella," Dr. Marina replies, "and more importantly, we can use this attempt as justification to expedite the entire investigation." Charles examines photographs that the police took of the seized equipment. "Dr. Henry, these men are professionals. This wasn't an amateur attempt. Do you think Sanders has more people at his disposal?" "He certainly does," Agent Foster replies. "But now he made a mistake. Directly attacking a protected witness is a serious federal crime." At that moment, they hear footsteps on the stairs. Isabella comes down alone, wearing a pink robe that Ella bought the week before. She walks up to the group of adults with the same determination she showed on the first day when she adjusted Arthur's tie. "Can I talk to you?" she asks. "Of course, sweetheart," Arthur replies, making space on the sofa beside him. Isabella sits down and observes each face present. "I heard you talking about Colonel Sanders." The adults exchange glances, surprised by the girl's keen hearing. "There's something I've never told anyone," she continues, "not even to Mom Ella or to you." "What is it?" Dr. Marina asks gently. "I saw Colonel Sanders." The silence that follows is absolute. "What do you mean you saw?" Agent Foster asks. "On the last day, Dad Raphael and Mom Marina were with me. A tall man with a white mustache and a scar on his face came to our house." Charles leans forward. "Isabella, are you sure?" "I am. He was wearing a military uniform and talking on a gold cell phone. Dad Raphael got very nervous when he saw him." "Did you hear any conversation?" "I did. The man said that Dad Raphael knew things he shouldn't know, and that if he didn't stop asking questions, bad things would happen to the family." Agent Foster writes down every word. "And what else did you hear?" "Dad Raphael said he had already sent the information to important people. The man got very angry and said he would find that information even if he had to hurt a lot of people." Arthur feels a growing admiration for Isabella's courage. A 6-year-old girl carrying such heavy memories and still managing to maintain her sanity and trust in adults. "Isabella," Arthur says, "Dr. Marina, would you be able to recognize this man if you saw him again?" "I would recognize him. He has very blue eyes and hands with golden rings." "And would you have the courage to identify him officially, to help the police?" Isabella looks at Arthur. "If Dad stays with me, I have the courage for anything." Agent Foster closes his notebook. "Dr. Henry, with this testimony we can finally start an official operation to arrest Sanders." "How long will it take?" "With the evidence we have now, combined with Isabella's testimony and the bank documents that Raphael left, we could have arrest warrants in 48 hours. "And will Isabella be safe?" "She will officially enter the Federal Witness Protection Program. She will have 24-hour security until Sanders and his entire network are neutralized." Isabella stands up and walks to the window that overlooks the garden, where the police are still working to collect evidence. When she returns, her expression is serene. "Dad, can I ask one more question?" "You can ask as many as you want." "After the bad men are arrested, will I continue living here with you?" The question everyone was waiting for, but no one wanted to address. Arthur looks at Ella, who nods encouragingly. "Isabella, would you like to continue living here?" "I would love to. Here I really feel at home." "Then you will stay here forever. I will take care of you until you grow up and become an independent young woman." "And what if Dad Raphael and Mom Marina come back?" "If they come back, you three will decide together what is best for you. But regardless of what happens, you will always have a family here." Isabella smiles, no longer the shy smile of the early days, but a radiant smile that lights up the entire room. Thank you for not giving up on me, Dad. Thank you for teaching me what it means to be a real father, daughter. 3 days later, Operation Rescue is launched simultaneously in New York, a house in New Jersey, and 4 other states. 23 people are arrested, including Colonel Sanders, who is found on a farm in upstate New York. The international trafficking network is dismantled, freeing dozens of children who were being held captive. Isabella, accompanied by Arthur, identifies Sanders in a police identification room. Her voice is firm when she confirms, "It's him. He's the man who threatened my family." 6 months later, the case becomes a national documentary, but Isabella's name and image are protected by court order. She appears only as the brave girl who helped save hundreds of children. In the library of the mansion on the Upper West Side, now completely renovated with a special section for children's books, Isabella draws a new story. It is the illustration of a family, a tall man in a suit, a woman who looks very much like Ella, and a girl with braids, all holding hands in front of a big house. "This is my true family now," she explains to Arthur, who watches the drawing. Over her shoulder, "And who are those people?" he asks, pointing to 2 smaller figures in the background of the illustration. "They are Dad Raphael and Mom Marina. Even if they never come back, they will always be part of my story." Arthur hugs Isabella from behind, feeling a deep gratitude for all the events that brought that extraordinary girl into his life. Outside, New York continues its frantic dance of lights and movement. But inside the quiet library of the mansion, a family built by fate, strengthened by love, and solidified by courage, writes a new chapter in a story that began with a fitted tie and a single word: Dad. If you like this, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and if you watched until here, comment, "I watched until here," and leave your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's going to be very exciting.